Eli had never imagined that being the only human on a distant alien station could be so complicated. Vareth 9 floated like a jewel among the stars, its swirling gas storms glowing faintly through the viewport. From his small workstation on the edge of the plasma research wing, he could see the vastness of the planet below, a living mass of gases and light. It was beautiful, but it made him feel very small, a tiny human among creatures who had evolved in ways he could barely understand. He worked quietly, soldering circuits into place and recalibrating plasma conduits. The station hummed with energy, a living pulse beneath his hands, and yet his mind kept wandering to the Volari. The Volari were unlike anything humans had ever encountered. They were tall, graceful, and their movements carried a strange rhythm that suggested both strength and beauty. Their skin had subtle metallic tones reflecting light like a polished gemstone, and their eyes were large, almond-shaped and luminous. But what always puzzled him were the lines of their bodies, the way their armor-like plates flexed with movement, revealing just enough of their natural form to make humans uncomfortable, but not in any threatening way. He tried not to stare. He really did. But sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, his eyes would drift, drawn to the elegance and mystery of Sarai, the captain of the station, and one of the few Volari he had to work with directly. She had noticed. How could she not? Volari were keenly aware of subtle changes in behavior, in posture, in expression. Human, Sarai said one morning as he adjusted a conduit, her voice calm but filled with curiosity. Does my form confuse you? Is that why you stare so oddly? Eli froze, screwdriver in midair. He looked at her, trying to form words, but the only thing that came out was a nervous laugh. I'm not staring out of disrespect, Captain. I'm curious. I mean, your species is fascinating. The way your body moves, it's different from anything I've seen. Sarai tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing in thought. Then she laughed softly, a sound like wind through crystal towers. Curiosity is an honor among my people, human. To notice before asking. That is rare. Many humans only see what they think they know. Eli felt his cheeks warm, though it was a little hard to tell through the suit he always wore. He realized that what he had assumed would be awkward, a human being unable to understand an alien's body, was not insulting to her at all. In fact, she seemed pleased. Their work together continued over the next few days. The plasma conduits were unstable and the research station needed careful monitoring. Eli adjusted flow regulators and rewrote some of the algorithms that controlled energy distribution. Sarai watched him work, sometimes offering advice, sometimes silently observing. He noticed that she moved with precision, as if every step and gesture had a purpose, and it fascinated him. At one point, Eli accidentally spilled a small container of conductive gel. It hissed and steamed when it hit the active circuits. Panic flashed in his mind. But before he could react, Sarai was there, her long fingers delicately adjusting the flow of plasma to prevent a disaster. You must trust yourself. Human, she said calmly, her eyes on his. Fear will make your hands hesitate. Curiosity must guide them. Her words were strange but comforting. Eli realized he was learning more about human courage by watching her handle the situation than he had from any textbook. And strangely, he found himself learning about the Volari too. Not from their anatomy, not from their armor, but from the way they faced challenges with calmness and precision. Over the next few weeks, Eli became an integral part of the station crew. The other Volari still looked at him with a mix of curiosity and caution. He was different and the only human among them, but he was proving himself useful. He fixed systems, improved efficiency, and even offered ideas that the Volari had not considered. One evening, while calibrating a plasma core with Sarai, he accidentally leaned a little too close, trying to read a gauge. She noticed and raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips. You are still learning, human, she said, but you are brave. That is rare among your kind. Eli laughed softly, shaking his head. I'm just trying not to break anything. Sarai's gaze lingered on him for a moment, thoughtful and quiet. Sometimes, she said, you must risk breaking things to understand them. Humans are unpredictable, yes? Yet that unpredictability, sometimes it is what allows you to survive. Eli felt a strange warmth in his chest. Her words weren't just a compliment. They were an acknowledgement that humans had something unique, something that even the most advanced species couldn't replicate. He felt pride swell inside him. not just for himself but for humanity. It was during one particularly tense mission that the real test came. A solar flare from Vareth 9 had destabilized the plasma conduits, sending a surge of energy through the station. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, and the entire station trembled. Eli's heart raced as he and Sarai raced toward the core chamber. The conduits were sparking violently. Plasma hissed and arced through the air. Eli's hands flew over the controls trying to stabilize the energy, but the readings were erratic. Sarai moved beside him, her own hands adjusting conduits and redirecting flow with uncanny precision. "Human, focus," she called. "Do not let fear control you. You can do this." Eli took a deep breath, shutting out the panic that threatened to overtake him. He relied on what he knew: his training, his intuition, and the countless hours of studying alien technology. Slowly, methodically, he began to redirect the plasma, stabilize the flow, and prevent the reactor from overloading. When the surge finally subsided, the room fell silent except for the soft hum of the now stable core. Eli leaned against the console, exhausted, while Sarai looked at him with an expression he could barely interpret. Pride, respect? Something else, something deeper. "You did well, human," she said softly. "You faced something that would have killed others, and you did not hesitate. That is what I respect." Eli smiled, though he was still catching his breath. I just did what I had to. I couldn't let the station blow up." Sarai's gaze softened. "You did more than save the station. You showed us something we did not know. Human courage is unpredictable. And sometimes it is exactly what is needed." That night, Eli lay in his small quarters staring at the stars through the viewport. He thought of the Valari, of Sarai, and of the strange bond that had begun to form between them. It wasn't friendship in the human sense, and it wasn't quite the way the Valari saw relationships. It was something unique, a connection formed through respect, curiosity, and shared experience. He realized that the Valari had a way of making him feel seen, not just as a human, but as a person. And in turn he had begun to understand them, not just their forms, but their minds, their values, and their ways of seeing the universe. When he drifted to sleep, he dreamt of Vareth 9, of plasma storms that danced like ribbons of light, and of Sarai's calm, guiding presence beside him. And though he did not fully understand it yet, he felt that something important was beginning, something that could change the way humans and Valari saw each other forever. The next morning, as he entered the plasma wing, Sarai was already there, adjusting the conduits with her usual grace. She glanced at him, a small smile on her lips. "Good morning, human," she said. "Are you ready to see what the universe has in store today?" Eli returned her smile, "As ready as I'll ever be, Captain," and with that they set to work. Two beings from entirely different worlds, learning to understand each other not through words alone, but through courage, curiosity, and the silent language of respect. The next morning, the Vithari medbay was buzzing with activity. Repairs were being made to the orbital outpost, and teams of medics and engineers moved quickly to stabilize the damaged sections. Eli Grant, though still weak from his 17 broken bones, insisted on standing. Every movement caused a sharp sting of pain, but he ignored it, focusing instead on the sounds of activity around him. A sudden alarm cut through the chatter, piercing the air with its urgent tone. Red lights flashed, illuminating the hallways in warning. The tremor that had collapsed the tower earlier had destabilized other sections of the station. Energy conduits sparked, structural beams groaned, and dust filled the air as the station trembled violently. Eli's eyes sharpened. He recognized the danger immediately. "People are in those halls," he said softly to Dr. Kiravan, who was already checking the status displays. Kiravan glanced at him, her face a mixture of worry and disbelief. "Eli, you can't move. Your bones are still healing. You'll break again." He shook his head with determination. "I have to. Someone needs to help." Before she could protest further, Eli limped toward the exit. Each step sent jolts of pain through his body, but he forced himself forward. His arms still bore fractures that had only partially healed, but he held himself upright with the help of a support rod he found nearby. Every movement was calculated, careful yet purposeful. As he reached the first corridor, a portion of the ceiling began to collapse. Dust and debris rained down. Eli acted without hesitation. Using his injured arms, he lifted a fallen beam just long enough for two small Vithari children to crawl out of the danger zone. His muscles screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain. The children looked back at him with wide, fearful eyes, their small hands waving in gratitude before disappearing into the safety of the medbay's reinforced corridors. Kiravan followed closely, trying to keep up despite her slower pace. She was stunned into silence. The human in front of her, already battered and weak, was acting with bravery beyond comprehension. Every step he took, every motion he made, defied logic, yet he did not falter. The alarm grew louder and the tremors intensified. A wall panel sparked and exploded, sending a shower of molten metal across the corridor. Eli ducked instinctively, protecting the children behind him, and shifted the falling debris with his remaining strength. The pain in his body was intense, each movement threatening to open a fresh wound. But he refused to give up. The lives of others mattered more than his own suffering. As they moved forward, Kiravan watched Eli carefully. His endurance was astonishing, but it was not just physical resilience that amazed her. It was his focus, his unshakable calm in the midst of chaos. No other species she had encountered would have dared to act this way while so severely injured. The Vithari valued survival above all else, yet this human risked everything for others. They reached the main atrium, where a massive support beam had shifted, blocking access to a critical emergency hatch. Several injured personnel were trapped behind it. Eli gritted his teeth, his arms trembling as he approached the beam. His legs burned, his ribs protested, and his body screamed in agony. Yet he bent down, gripping the beam with his partially healed hands, and lifted it just enough for the trapped individuals to escape. When the last person was safely through the hatch, Eli tried to straighten up. His body gave a sharp cry of protest as a fracture in his shoulder reopened slightly. He staggered, nearly collapsing, but caught himself against the wall. Kiravan rushed to his side, worry etched across her face. "You are insane," she said breathlessly. "Do you even realize how much you are hurting yourself?" Eli smiled faintly, blood trickling from a small cut on his lip. "I know, but they're safe. That's what matters." The alarm continued, but the immediate danger had passed for most of the personnel. Engineers and medics worked quickly to stabilize the remaining structures, and the station began to settle. Eli, despite his injuries, remained near the most critical points, ensuring that no one else was trapped or in danger. Hours later, the Vithari Council convened a meeting to review the events. Kiravan and other medical officers reported what they had witnessed. A human, severely injured, had moved through a collapsing station, saving dozens of lives while enduring pain that would have incapacitated any other being. The council members, a species that prized logic, skill, and survival, were silent. One of the elder Vithari finally spoke. Being this human, he is extraordinary. His endurance, his courage, it defies every known law of survival. He acted not for personal gain, not for honor, but for others." "That is remarkable," Kiravan nodded. "I have never seen anything like it. His injuries should have killed him, yet he continued. I have treated hundreds of severe cases, and never have I seen such resilience, such determination. He has taught us something no book or theory ever could." Meanwhile, Eli had returned to the medbay, exhausted but still upright. His body was battered, bruised, and bleeding in small areas, but his mind remained clear. The children he had saved earlier sat quietly nearby, looking up at him with awe and gratitude. One of the younger medics approached him cautiously. "Human, why do you endure so much pain? Why do you keep risking yourself?" Eli smiled faintly. "Because sometimes pain is worth it. Because if I don't act, someone else might suffer. If you can help, you do it. That's all." The medics were silent, not because they did not understand, but because there was nothing to say. The words did not fully capture what they had witnessed. This human had survived, not because of advanced healing, but because of an inner strength that could not be measured. Days passed, and Eli's body slowly recovered. Each day brought new tests, minor setbacks, and painful adjustments. Yet he never complained. He walked again, slowly at first, testing his strength, then with growing confidence. Kiravan observed him closely, taking careful notes. She had come to understand that humanity was not defined by speed, strength, or agility alone, but by a unique resilience and moral courage. During one training session for the Vithari soldiers, Eli assisted in lifting heavy equipment, demonstrating techniques to stabilize injuries while still performing necessary tasks. The soldiers watched in amazement, struggling to lift even half the weight he managed. His body, though injured, adapted to the task with intelligence and patience. One evening, as the station lights dimmed, Eli sat quietly near a viewing window, gazing at the stars. Kiravan joined him, standing silently for a moment before speaking. "You have changed everything we thought we knew about humans," she said softly. Eli looked at her, tired but calm. "I don't know about that. I just do what I can." "No," she said firmly. "It is more than that. You have shown courage, endurance, and selflessness in ways we never thought possible. The Council will remember this. Your story, your actions, they will be taught to every Vithari child. Your humanity is extraordinary." Eli chuckled faintly. "Well, that's nice, I guess. But I didn't do it for fame. I did it because it had to be done. Someone had to act. That's what humans do." Kiravan shook her head, smiling despite herself. "Your species is remarkable. We can study your physiology all we want, but it's your spirit that is unbreakable." Weeks later, Eli was fully mobile again. He walked through the med bay, interacting with the recovered children and staff. Small gestures, like helping an injured nurse adjust a bandage or holding a door open for a young Vithari, displayed a quiet heroism that inspired everyone around him. His presence alone seemed to boost morale, giving the alien doctors and soldiers the courage to face new challenges. One day, a council delegation came to honor him formally. Kiravan stood beside him as the elders spoke of his bravery. 17 broken bones, and yet this human never surrendered. His courage is a model for all Vithari. We recognize him not only for his survival, but for the lesson he has taught us about resilience, selflessness, and the power of the human spirit. Eli smiled faintly, shaking his head. "I didn't do it for recognition. I just did what anyone would do if they could." The elders nodded, understanding, yet knowing it was something no other being could replicate. Eli had endured, had acted, and had survived in ways they would never fully comprehend. His courage was not loud or boastful. It was quiet, steady, and relentless. As he left the ceremony, Kiravan walked beside him. "You have changed how we see life, courage, and strength. You've shown us that survival isn't just about skill or technology. It's about heart." Eli looked up at her, smiling faintly, feeling the aches in his body but letting them pass. "Maybe," he said softly. "Or maybe humans are just stubborn. We don't quit easily." And as he walked down the hall of the orbital station, the stars beyond the windows reflecting in his tired but steady eyes, every Vithari present realized the truth. Humanity was more than a species. They were a force of resilience, courage, and heart. 17 broken bones, countless injuries, and yet one human had taught them more than any history book, weapon, or theory ever could. For Eli, it was just another day of being human. But for the Vithari, it was a lesson they would never forget.